That was so weird. I was just telling Dave going live now, and then like, oh, I have to burp, so let me like try to like hold that in, and then we're live all of a sudden. But yes, we are live. The beauties of live entertainment. If you find this entertaining, it's a big Gorny finale that we've been talking about. We've been teasing for weeks, so it's finally here, Dave. It's finally here.
Yeah, teasing for weeks, dreading for weeks would probably be more accurate in my case. I was like,
He's
you
the
know,
he's
they
the Key and Pill gif of Jordan Peele. It's just like all the sweat coming
sweat.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The second half of the season was kind of bringing me on board, and then I was like, are they gonna
Oh.
go out on a sour note for me? But we'll
Or are they gonna keep you sweating until
they're
season three
gonna
in
keep me. Yeah.
2025 or however long the strike lasts? But yeah, I see people are popping off in the live chat. So Dave, let's go ahead and get this show started.
Right on.
I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 254th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new. And tonight we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 10, the season finale, Hegemony, written by showrunner Henry Alonso Myers and directed by, I've been saying this woman's name since the short treks in 2019, I think, or 2018, but Maja Vrvil. I probably got it wrong in a new way this time, but hopefully eventually I get it right. Uh, but yeah, it's going to be a lot to unpack, a lot of big stuff. Um, Before we get into that, just a quick shout out to all of the lovely Tex-Trek Patreon supporters. We like to celebrate with them every month. If you're watching this live on Friday, then tomorrow, Saturday, we're doing our monthly watch party where we're going to be watching two episodes, actually. A Lower Decks episode, Here All Trust Nothing, the DS9 crossover one, and then Prodigy's All the World's a Stage, which is the kind of the TOS-y one with the Enterpriseians cosplaying but questionably screen accurate TOS uniforms, but it's the enthusiasm is what counts. But yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. If you're listening to the podcast later, you've already missed it, but that's okay. We do one every month on a Saturday afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. But so big, huge thank you to the people who make our show possible: Starfleet, Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Earl Grey Trekkie, Quarks Bar, Ben Ginium, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, and our anonymous supporters. And I'm looking forward to that watch party. I think that's gonna be a fun double header. So.
Yeah, that's a nice change up for us.
And in other news, I just recently got back from Star Trek Las Vegas. Well, it's not Star Trek Las Vegas anymore because it's not official, but STLV, which doesn't stand for anything, I guess. But we can probably come up with a fun acronym. Uh, our friend Aaron Geekfilter in the audience suggested that maybe SNW should stand for Severe Narrative Whiplash, just with the tonal shifts we get from episode to episode, which I like. I consider that like a strength of the show.
Yeah, I
Much
think so. I think so too. But it has been notable
Yeah.
in the
Well, I
last
mean,
few.
watch DS9 season 6, which I consider like the best season of Star Trek ever. It's like that's something I'm into at least.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, we had a lot of fun at the convention. I did some streams from I did a stream just recapping it with Rachel, who was also there with me. I did a stream just walking around the convention floor if people want to get like a secondhand look at the convention. Or if you were there and want to see if you're in the background somewhere. If you saw me running around with a gimbal on Friday, then you probably are. And speaking of conventions, we are 2 weeks away from GalaxyCon here in Austin. Going to be a lot of Trek actors. I think Shatner, Koenig, Frakes, Gates McFadden, Will Wheaton, LeVar Burton, Terry Farrell, Armin Shimmerman. Might be missing someone, but yeah, that's going to be in 2 weeks here in Austin. So I will be there. I'm actually going to be running a Trek panel. I don't know what day yet, but need to get to work on that. But yeah, really looking forward to that. And if people do attend and you see me, please say hi. I love talking to our audience in person, like Francis from San Antonio, who came and talked to me and Rachel in Vegas.
And you can maybe take some questions in person at a panel.
Yeah, or if you think I suck, you can tell me in person.
Finally, a chance to heckle Fatheree in person. How could you resist that? But you'd probably have more fun having having like a drink with you and hanging out.
And that's pretty much everything on the news front. Lower Decks coming. This is our last Strange New Worlds episode to talk about for a while.
Yeah, that's
okay.
crazy.
We still have stuff that we can talk about on Fridays until Lower Decks gets here. It's not going to be that long of a wait. Only a month. So September 7th is the premiere, and they're going to drop 2 episodes that week. So that'll be a big premiere. Lots to talk about that week. We'll actually be doing the live Friday show on September 8th on Star Trek Day.
Oh wow!
So, which is also the 50th anniversary of the animated series, which is what I'll talk about in the GalaxyCon panel. So, Hegemony. I'm going to quickly recap this finale episode by reading the official synopsis and then kind of expand on that with spoilers just to refresh it for everyone. But the official synopsis reads, when the USS Enterprise investigates an attack on a colony at the edge of Federation space, Captain Pike and his crew face the return of a formidable enemy. And if you're familiar with the word hegemony, I've never heard the word hegemony used outside of the Gorn hegemony in Star Trek, I think. Like, it doesn't
I
get said
sometimes
very
hear it used in terms of like imperialist nations, and I admit my understanding of it in like how it differs from say an empire is a little vague.
Yeah, I don't know the exact definition. Maybe we'll look that up. But yeah, it is the Gorn. The Gorn return. The Gorn attack a colony with a bunch of little Gorn babies, and it's probably because a sun is making them go crazy with the CMEs that Scotty is talking about, that Sam Kirk was talking about. And we think Battelle might be dead. We think Chapel might be dead, except we know that she's alive because of the original series. But it turns out like they're both still alive, except Battelle is pregnant with Gorn babies. So that's alarming. But they get her to the Enterprise. They sedate her, but the rest of the landing party and a lot of the colony survivors are captured by a Gorn ship. And Pike is under orders not to attack the Gorn, but they're about to run off with his people. And the big decision of what is he going to do is yet to be seen, yet to be revealed. We have to wait at least 18 months, perhaps longer.
You think
my estimation, but
Father, you think he's just going to be like, turn it back around? Yeah, let's just go back into Federation space and play it safe.
Well, I mean, it might be so. A lot of people find Best of Both Worlds Part 2 a little underwhelming compared to Part 1, so I guess that would kind of be within that tradition. But yeah, I think that is what they were going for here with the kind of a Best of Both Worlds type cliffhanger.
And honestly, I can see, we'll talk about this more when we get to the end, I know, but Pike doing a little kind of Kirk switcheroo where he's like, he says they're withdrawing. He plays it completely straight with everybody in his crew, or like that. That's what it seems like. And then he's got some schemes within that.
We'll see.
And
he's not really a schemy dude. He's not really the
I should say not a scheme,
like
but he's also he's done some stuff before. He outwitted pirates by creating a what do you call it, an insurrection? What do you call the pirate insurrection thing?
A mutiny.
A mutiny, yeah. He created a mutiny. That's a Kirk kind of move. He's not. It's not like he's incapable of it. He's just not known for it. But they also in that episode the what's with the Jesus asteroid,
Oh yeah,
episode
the
two.
comet. Yeah.
Yeah. He told them that they were complying, and he was secretly running ops behind their back. Pike can do that stuff. So yeah, but
Hmm.
we'll see. We'll talk more about it when
the
we get.
the the expression on his face and the just like the long shots that kind of linger suggested to me that like he honestly like was very unsure what to do, at least in that
Sure.
moment. Maybe something, maybe an idea sparks right after that to
Yeah,
be continued card. But
you cannot go and start a war to save a few people.
uh we should each share our opening statement and just kind of share our broad impressions on the episode before we get into the episode breakdown. This is the last one we're doing for a while, Dave. Do you want to go first, or do you want to go last?
Let's go first. Let's go first.
Okay.
I'll do it just to
So what do you got,
change.
Dave? What was your
Okay.
broad takeaway here?
All right. So you know, like I said, I'd been kind of dreading this episode a bit, and the idea of Battelle being offed kind of for cheap drama or potent, like that it might be feel like that. And indeed, early on, I was not really feeling the episode. I was pretty worried that all those things were coming to pass. But I ended up overall, I'm going to say, actually pretty pleasantly surprised by this one. I still think that it kind of had some slightly dopey action movie tropes once or twice. And the kind of level of monstrosity assigned to the Gorn still kind of just doesn't sit well with me. But I feel like they have percolating in the backgrounds the means to kind of salvage the Gorn for me. First of all, they didn't just straight up kill off Battelle. That's up in the air,
Not
and
yet.
we even if she exits from the show somehow, I have a feeling that they are not going to. They wouldn't bring up Hemmer only to repeat it almost exactly. I think I suspect that she's going to make it personally. That um, they also brought up some possible reasons for the Gorns going into like their swarm mode or whatever, which at least suggested that it's not just like they're mean, but rather there is at the very least some strong biological impulse for them to do this. And maybe something like that will end up creating some of the depth. Even Pike was saying he wants to try and find that thing in him, but it's very hard to spot. And I think that could be interesting. That's the story of the Gore, and it's like this is trying to find the depth in like xenomorphs and aliens. But what did I like about it? Obviously, I liked that. I liked the possibility, at least, that they're bringing out of some depth for the Gorn. Loved seeing Scotty. Everybody liked that. And how could you not? I liked seeing a big Gorn. I thought their saucer crash thing was a pretty cool action movie thing, like sequence. Um, and what else? Even though this is using tropes, I will say, and some ideas still from Aliens, once or twice, I'm like, please don't make the motion tracker sound and stuff like that. But I felt like somehow it distanced itself from it. This, the wild card that was Scotty, the fact that there was also stuff going on a giant space debris field, which felt very Star Trek and not Aliensy. Kind of took it out of the complete, the Aliens playbook a little bit and made it feel more Star Trek to me. So yeah, I was having a good time with it. I kind of liked the episode, and until I see Battelle killed in some hokey way, or until I see them say, "Yep, it looks like the Gorn are monsters after all," I feel like I have reason to hope that this cliffhanger will have some cool resolution, and so I'm pretty excited. And ready to watch this part two in the year 2030 or whatever it happens.
Someday. Um, well, cool. For me, like I was saying, I think this was kind of their attempt at a best of both worlds. At least, I've seen a few episodes this season. I've pointed out where it's like, oh, I think that they are trying to do something in the model of a previous, beloved episode of Trek. But there were some really great moments here. The music, Nami's score really stood out. The effects were top notch, incredibly cinematic. I thought the directing and editing were very impressive. It's really amazing when there's characters like Spock and Chapel who I know survived the original series, but in the heat of the moment, I'm panicking. I'm like trying to like calm myself down. Like, oh no, it's gonna be okay. I know that they're gonna be okay. It's like take it easy, Father. You don't have to get too worked up about this. But I love that it was still able to keep me on the edge of my seat. But a good bit of the writing in this episode let me down, and sadly, it's like I was expecting, but it's still not what I want with the Gorn. This is the only episode of season 2 that I would say I dislike.
Mm.
But that being said, I admit to like disliking it as a whole. There's a lot of stuff in here that I really did enjoy that I want to be sure to highlight. And I do see a possibility similar to, Dave's thoughts of, oh, well, it is possible the second half of the story, when we eventually get it, sometime around Zephram Cochrane's warp flight in 2063. But when we finally do get that, I think it might get me on board the Strange New Worlds Gorn, but I also I don't expect it to. I don't require it to. It doesn't have to. I am obviously anticipating season 3. I love this show. It is my favorite of the modern era of Star Trek shows. But I'm more excited for episodes 2 through 10 than I am episode 1 of season 3.
Your deal, Fatheree, is that you're like, I can allow that there can be here and there spot pockets that I just don't like, but the show's overall batting average is so high that I'll just enjoy the stuff I enjoy. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I love Deep Space Nine, but I don't like the Muse when I watch that. When Jake Sisko is getting molested by the psychic vampire lady, it's like, yeah, like I'm never gonna like that episode, but I still love Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And there's stuff in that episode I like with Luoxana's B story, but just like there's stuff in this episode that I like. So, but yeah, it's just I have some, I guess, just reservations about this interpretation of the Gorn. And like I said, it might go somewhere where I like, but just it makes it harder for me. You know how, Dave, you bring this up a lot, but kind of like a frustration you get when there's like these big emotional moments, but you're not engaged in the story enough to like really feel those emotions. And you talk about like getting kind of annoyed with that stuff.
Right.
Say,
You
like,
feel
annoyed,
the moment just slide by you, kind of.
But yeah, like there were moments like that in here, and I'm like, this is so well executed, and I just wish it was like in a story that I cared about a bit more. But there was a lot of things in the script that did rub me the wrong way that I'll point out as well. But there's a ton of great work that went into this, and overall, as much as I disliked the entire story, it's still not the entire story. There's still a second half. So I'm not settling too hard in any particular opinion. I'm just like, currently it's like, well, this is the one I enjoyed the least. It's the first episode since episode 9, the last Gorn episode of Strange New Worlds that I disliked. And even that one had tons of stuff that I enjoyed in it.
So what you're saying is, if you had on a scale between in front of you right now, this episode or the Land of the Lotus Eaters.
I would take Land of the Lotus Eaters. I mean, I didn't dislike that one. I just thought it was kind of
just checking.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that was actually a fun discussion because it was a kind of a mid episode, but it was still fun to talk about, and I kind of ended up liking more than I expected as I kind of reviewed it.
Well, maybe I'll find more to like once we start breaking this episode down. So let's just start off with that opening. It kind of starts off like this is Star Trek Cayuga. This is like Captain Battelle on the Cayuga, and they're on their mission. You notice there's like weird solar activity. Did you get a chance to rewatch this? I know you've been pretty busy lately.
It's another one of those where I'm going on one viewing. So I did watch in this case what do you call it? Ready Room for it, and.
Oh, good.
Which was mostly a special effects oriented one, and I did just a little bit of reading here and there on it, but yeah, it's if I need a reminder here and there, don't hate me.
People should check out the Ready Room for this week, by the way, because those dudes that make the Gorn, all the Gorn suit and the puppets and all that stuff, those dudes are pretty badass. I thought that was really cool seeing their work up close like that.
Yeah, it was cool to see them playing around with it and just how much craft it goes into it, and they actually walk you through a lot of like really precisely how they kind of get from point A to point B.
Yeah, I would love to see them do more stuff in Star Trek. Like, I bet they could build a badass Tholian. Imagine like
Yeah, yeah.
a Tholian walking around or
It's
something.
time. It's time.
Yeah. um, but yeah, they're at the Midwest town model
Mhm.
space colony, which I like that. It was kind of a TOS-y, like that kind of a, we're just going to use whatever
Yeah.
sets are available. Like, this was from some TV show that shot in Toronto, so uh,
That actually got it off on a good foot with me because obviously, yes, definitely evoked TOS's let's use what we've got on the back lot kind of stuff. But they did, like, just by with the simple explanation of this was like an aesthetic that was chosen for the colony. And yeah, you're also going to see some like more high tech vehicles driving around it. So, it's got a little bit of an upgrade in execution than say how that might have had to have been done in the 60s where it's like, well, we just got to use the set as is. They were able to like put in some kind of nice extras.
and there's totally gonna, if we survive into the future long enough, there's totally gonna be people like this that have like nostalgia boners for the 20th century, and they want like that Norman Rockwell Americana vintage type thing. I mean, like,
No,
think of people now who, like, they love to like dress up at as medieval people at Ren fairs and stuff, even though like,
now, bro, it's gonna be all 90s style. It's gonna be grunge and shit like that. They're gonna be living in grunge town. And the Matrix said the 90s were the pinnacle of human achievement.
if
So
if
obviously
you
they were
read
right.
if you read an early draft of the Matrix script, it actually says that, I believe the cycle, it runs from 1980 until 2010, and then it restarts over, and it just always stays within those 30 that 30-year period. Which I mean, I'm jealous of everyone. I plugged into the Matrix. I was like, uh,
Yeah, that's a solid span if you happen to be an American or a person in the world of some decent means. You're in a decent period there.
yeah, which I guess is also true about 20th century Midwest America. But it's just like, people like to go to the Ren Fair, but they're not like, the Spanish Inquisition. There's like, it's like the friendly modern version of it.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
but yeah, they're giving Chapel a ride, which was, it's kind of convenient. I think a lot of like the stuff with Chapel. But we get Pike on Skype when he calls Battelle to talk to his girlfriend. What do you
Classic
think
Pike
of?
Skype.
How I've said a lot, like how I don't really care that much about Battelle. They've never really fleshed out her character, or they don't do enough with between her and Pike.
Hmm.
But this episode is like the first time. Well, not the first time. I guess I started kind of feeling it with the scenes in the musical.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, when they're like arguing about like their vacation and stuff, I guess like I needed it to feel like a little bit more real like that.
Right.
But she has definitely grown on me in this episode. I'd still be
I
fine
do
with her
think
leaving
you're
the show, but
I think you're right, Fathery, that she doesn't have a lot of depth of character. But I liked when I see them interact together; it actually feels pretty natural. So I think
mhm.
maybe what I've been more reacting to is the way they kind of bounce off of each other. It had a kind of the natural ease of kind of a slightly long-term relationship couple, but who are making it work, have mutual respect and all that stuff, and clearly like each other, but like kind of they put the romantic side on the back burner anytime they're talking in any formal way, like as captains. And so I think that's what I like more than say, oh, I love Battelle. I like how Battelle interacts with Pike.
um, it is nice to have a character who can kind of like put Pike in his place, because like his captain, he's so
Sure.
used to, he kind of has like the final word on everything. So it's nice to see someone else who can kind of like push back against them a little bit. And
And she can call him out.
yeah, and they do a really good job on this show, especially in this episode of like, uh, Pike is a fallible main character, which is always kind of a tricky thing to do, but an essential thing to do for a lot of storytelling. And
He's not too fallible.
but it's especially tricky in Star Trek, where you have like this Gene Roddenberry vision of like the humanity will be better in the future than they are now. But like part of his I mean, one of his issues, like he's not a really good wartime captain, and I love that about him. I think that's really cool, and we kind of
Yeah.
saw that in last year's finale, Equality of Mercy, which very much stated that Kirk would have Kirk was the guy they needed in a balance of terror. Pike was
Mm-hmm.
not that dude.
Yeah.
And they kind of reminded some of that stuff here, but also like his issues with like commitment and opening up to Patel and like showing some vulnerability and being like, oh yeah, I just called you because I missed you, but I was embarrassed to be like a guy like, oh, I missed my girlfriend. Can I please talk to you before I have my coffee, get my day started, and so like him kind of like coming out of his shell a little bit and she's
Yeah.
like, oh, was that so hard to admit that you missed me? I like
Mhm.
that stuff. And he's
That's a
holding the
good point.
medallion, that sailor medallion that she gave him as a
Yeah.
gift. He like has that in his hand when he's talking to her.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. That's interesting. I think you make a good point, Father. Pike early on, he's like so naturally likable and charismatic, so good with the crew and everything. He's making them food that there was almost a little danger of like this guy's too good to be true. He's a
Mm.
little, what was it like in fiction? What they call like a whatever the male equivalent of a Mary Sue is,
Gary Stew,
a
which
Gary Stew.
a lot of Star
Yeah,
Trek captains come off as at times. Like,
right. And so, yeah, I think it's good to show him having his moment where arguably he blows his stack in Lotus Eaters. He has commitment issues and these other things. So yeah, I can agree with that. And I like that is a nice touch that he had the amulet.
I don't know if you remembered the shuttle crashing when it shows Scotty later in the
Hmm.
episode, but this has to be Scotty's shuttle on the run from the Gorn ship.
Oh,
It goes
yeah,
down
yeah.
at the
That's
beginning.
funny. I like that seems very obvious, but I did not put those together. Um,
It's like a stealth first appearance of Scotty.
yeah. I
Unless he
mean,
was like
he already
actually
had a
like,
stealth first appearance with his audio, and I know
oh
it was a
yeah,
different
yeah,
it
yeah.
was a different actor. I know.
He could have been like hiding in a crate or something in season 1 that we don't know about. But, unless there's something like that, we know that this shuttle is got him. And then the Gorn ship. I do love kind of like the old like 1950s flying saucer vibes. It has like that vintage sci-fi, which Strange New Worlds likes. The show opens with Pike watching The Day the Earth Stood Still on TV. So, um,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and I thought
And
the first.
but well, I want to quick jump back to that, Father. That ship. Have we seen that specific weird ass
Yeah,
ship?
it's the destroyer. They have like there's the Gorn destroyer is the big one, and then the Gorn hunters are the little one. They were both
Okay.
introduced in Memento Mori.
What was mainly hunting them in that?
Oh, they started off with some of the little ones, and then they got to deal with the big one.
Okay. It's spooky looking. It reminded me of course, of Independence Day's reveal. Maybe a little bit of V from back when I was a little kid. Um, I do think I kind of wish this is clearly this show when they are going to sort of homage something, they'll sort of do it overtly. They've done it with Aliens. I think that was a kind of a nod
Hmm.
to Independence Day. I think they referenced the Buffy musical in their musical episode. I think they referenced Deep Space Nine in the War episode, and I kind of would like them to stop doing that. To go ahead and I don't mind them keying off of some classic tropes and stuff like that, but go ahead and I think have the confidence to just make it your own. You don't need to go and say we know we're borrowing. You know,
Kind of like how Picard season 3 kept bringing up stuff from the Star Trek movies, like the TOS era movies.
yeah, yeah. It's just a hey, remember when?
Yeah.
Remember that thing you like? It's back. Um, yeah, I think because we'll talk about this more when they get down into the colony and the Gorns are running loose. One of the things, the reason it didn't bother me so much and make it feel like as much like Aliens, is because it wasn't following the beats that Aliens had. Leon kills one of the little Gorn right off the bat. That's not exactly a thing that happened in Aliens. They never had any, monstrous firefight with them. They were just hiding out from them and trying to maneuver around. And just the all the sort of the plot beats and stuff didn't feel particularly like they were from Aliens. That they were in a small town taken over by aliens was kind of it. So it ultimately was a slightly minor thing for me that when they do their references like that, but I still wish they would do less of it.
What about like the dude ringing the bell outside of the barber shop? Did you like that, or is that kind of dumb?
Is that a thing that people did in the 50s when an alien would invade?
It actually makes more sense on rewatch because we know that whatever interference field that they're deploying, it's already started because Pike and Batel's call dropped, so
Yeah,
he
yeah.
probably doesn't have like reception to like call folks, so he just sounds
Well,
the manual bell.
no, I think it's pretty cool. And it does seem like it'd be one of those things where, if they're trying to recreate a 50s type town, like, that might have been just a, hey, if they used to have this tradition, you'd be like watching to make sure there were no commie jets flying over, or that the Ruskies weren't coming over the hills to invade, or something like that. And yeah, I can see like a town would have a general thing. Oh, there's a fire, ring the thing. Anything crazy going on, ring one of these bells. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mm. I think most small towns have a siren instead of like a manual bell, but maybe the siren broke or something. Or they're just like really vintage here. I did like the
Actually,
Pike's.
I was going to
Go
say,
ahead.
Father, maybe we know this is probably not an exact recreation of the 50s thing. Like, they didn't be like, hey, let's bring back racism, too. Um, so I do actually kind of like the idea that they just blurred some stuff. They got some of it wrong. They broke it. They added a little Old Westy kind of vibe to it. The show doesn't have that baked into it, but I could easily imagine it.
I like the reaction and kind of the seriousness when they receive the message on the Enterprise and it's like garbled, but you hear Battelle just saying things like "under attack, Gorn," and Pike instantly like he drops all the dad jokes and he gets serious. Even though I just said he's not like a
Yeah,
wartime captain, but he can handle
he can get
himself and his ship
serious.
in a scrappy situation. He can take things seriously, but when he's like Ortega's give it all she's got, and he immediately like goes and has like that meeting with April where they talk about the Gorn and April talks about it is weird trying to square this away with Arena, where in Arena like kind of like the whole point of the story is like we don't know what was Gorn territory and what wasn't Gorn territory. um the
Is
what
is this
one of the
is this the planet from Arena, or is this
no, that was
me?
Cestus 3, and
And do we
this
do we
is
know? I mean, are they close? I mean, things could have changed, in that time. I'm sure that borders continue to be an issue with
yeah.
the Gorn.
This planet's named Parnassus Beta, but
Parnassus, yeah.
we don't know exactly where it is. I don't think there's enough in here to tell, but just given what we know about Gorn space, it's kind of like south of the Klingon Empire and a lot of star charts. But
Okay.
I'm not too worked up about trying to make all this match up with Arena because Davy Perez has explained like the explanation the writers have been thinking about or what they cooked up, but and we just got to wait and see whatever they do with the Gorn before we have all the facts. But basically, the way that Davy Perez described it is in Arena. There's a line from Kirk when he's talking about the Gorn when he's making his log, and he says this something like this creature that the Metron referred to as a Gorn. Obviously, like the intent when that was written was like, oh, that's the first time Kirk had ever heard about a Gorn. That's when he learned that word.
Hmm.
Davy Perez says the interpretation that they're going with is that they're retconning that to mean that Kirk has heard about the Gorn and he's surprised that this thing in a rubber suit, the slow moving thing, is a Gorn. He's like,
Hmm.
the Metron's called this a Gorn. This isn't like the Gorn that like Pike and Spock told me about. So that's
Yeah, I would honestly love. I talked about early on when like season one, wanting to see that. Well, what if there's strata within the Gorn society, and
mhm.
and if it's like, oh well, the ones that are on the Gorn homeworld are actually relatively benign or not so aggressive, but when they're out in space, and they get these weird solar flares or whatever, they, that's how they expand, and they do, maybe the Gorn planet guys turn a blind eye to the hyper aggression waves of, the advanced ships that go out there. So we could still get, some version of, yes, the Gorn society has different elements.
Yeah, and I think they will. If they don't do it in the show, someone will write a book that explains that, or I'll come up with a headcanon on my own. It'll be okay. It'll all come out in the wash
Mm.
eventually. So I don't want to focus on that too much, because if people are saying like this totally like overwrites Arena, like no, it doesn't. The one of the writers has gone on record and said like that's the approach that they're trying to square it away, and it kind of does make sense if you go back and watch Arena. There's also a line in there where McCoy says something like, "Could that be true? Was this Gorn territory all along?" And that kind of still works, even if like McCoy already knew about the Gorn and knew they were hostile and stuff. That he's just like reevaluating that with like new information he's learning from the Metrons. So
Yeah,
um,
I've seen, this is kind of comes from my the dramatic ups and downs in superhero comic books that have, part of my job
mhm.
too. I've seen a clever writer take, be seemingly painted into a corner and figure out a way out of it. I've also seen it not work, of course,
Yes.
it's like, can you make it work? I think there are ways, and I'm rooting for them to find those ways.
How do you feel about when April is the guy who's like, monster's just a word for someone who doesn't understand us, and Pike says, well, and sometimes a monster's just a monster.
Not loving it.
Yeah,
uh, you know, but can Pike be, worried about his girlfriend and be in a somewhat more aggressive mode? Sure.
he saw
Um,
them kill Hemmer.
and
People died. People on the Enterprise died in both Memento Mori and All Those Who Wonder. So it's like every time he's faced them, like they kill his friends.
did they ever? I remember us talking about this plot point in certain things, but like, have we ever just seen anybody sit down and say like, do the the kind of the classic that fan discussion of like, it's like, well, they have built a spacefaring civilization. They can clearly cooperate with each other and work in like very elaborate science to do this. You know, did they really not sort of build up some morality while working amongst themselves? I would kind of like to see that conversation happen. Doesn't have to be a full Star Trek Next Generation. We spend the whole episode on it, but I would like to see that convo happen, because if you just drop in the wild Pike saying maybe they're just monsters, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, that started. It started kind of getting on a bad foot with me there. Much more so in the ready room scene coming up. But yeah, they arrive. They discover the Cayuga's been destroyed. Which kind of I did like the mystery here. I complain about some of the writing coming up, but right here it was a good mystery setup, because like we arrive in the system and we don't know if Battelle is alive. We don't know what happened on the surface. We don't know what happened on the ship. We don't know where Chapel is. We don't know
Right,
who survived.
and they can't go maneuvering around.
Yeah, they're stuck behind this line, and that was cool. Like the Gorn, like they're freaking Starfleet out. They've been like massing up all their ships on the border, and April is really sweating it, just like we were talking about how we were nervous going into this episode. April was nervous going into this episode, and they just send like a JPEG of like, here's the solar system, here's a red line through it. It's like the bare minimum amount of communication, but the message reads loud and clear.
Now, what did remind me? What did the Gorn, on what um, authority do they draw this line? What do they say? That it is Gorn territory, or that, or
They
what?
don't, I don't think they say anything. They just like send this picture. And
And they're just like, you know, what did April say? Don't cross the line.
yes, yeah, he's
I
because
guess I would have liked for them to have the Gorn to have at least had part as part of the transmission. It's like, you are entering, our territory if you cross this
but
line.
they
So
don't
don't.
talk in the show. Like they don't have
That's right.
words
It's
that,
literally just the image,
yes.
and they're like, the Gorn are a little too powerful for us to go second guessing and being like, oh, maybe they mean come across the line. It's like, well, we don't want to start a war with these guys. That would be insane.
It's a pretty intimidating power move to
Yeah,
drop that on someone.
yeah. I guess points to the big evil Gorn captain who did that.
And they draw the line like right outside of the planet, like in between the planet and its moon, and it's like, we'll let you come all the way this close, but you don't come up. This planet is ours. We're gonna be down here doing whatever the hell we want. Don't you dare cross this line.
Yeah.
But and then immediately Pike goes into the ready room and he says, "Okay, we're gonna cross the line." And so when the episode actually lost me was when Sam Kirk comes in there and starts talking about his murder boner for killing Gorn, and how he wants to study them with a phaser so he can best figure out how to kill them. And then everyone else is like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome." And Benga's like, "Yeah, I want to help in that study too." And Lon's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, none of y'all want to kill them as much as I want to kill them." And it's like, yeah, I don't really want Starfleet people behaving this way. I guess I know
You
people
know
in the
what's weird,
23rd
Fab?
century are a little bit more like trigger happy, like when
Yeah.
they're dealing with like Klingons or Romulans or whatever. Like when they're like those guys are kind of like gung ho to go after the Horda because they're like that thing killed my friend and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
it was, I don't know, it was too much. They just laid it on so thick, and just was not what I want in Star Trek.
There's parts of the episode that felt like a Kelvin verse, scripting for a more action oriented story. And I know that they have been trying to, really, from season one. They want the audience to go with the interpretation that they're monsters. I think they're actually maybe even pointedly using that phrase and stuff in interviews and stuff, so that they can
Yeah,
then kind of get us thinking about otherizing them to the point
right.
where you're like, we want to see them get like shredded too. And then in season 3 they can go ahead and pull out something that will give them some nuance and depth, and then we'll be like, oh wow, and I was so caught up in it too.
I'm
This is
hoping
this.
that's the case.
I think it is. I actually think that they had to be. They're so often other times aware of what Starfleet's ethos is. It's weird that they just drop the ball all the time and they want you to think they're monsters and just kill the monsters. I'm like, come on, there's no way this writing team thinks that. But that's what they're trying to sell to us. And I think you're right, Fatheree, to be kind of annoyed at it. It's stop, don't try and sell it to us. It's we can be like confused as to like how they can be so bestial and yet not think like exterminate. It doesn't. You don't have to try and sell me on exterminate. That's not what Trek does.
Yeah, and what you were talking about with, I believe you were referencing a Akiva Goldsman said on the Ready Room in season one. It was either for the premiere, because they mentioned the Gorn there with La'an's backstory. They established that in the premiere, or episode 4, the first Gorn episode, Memento Mori. But one of those episodes, Akiva says, in Star Trek, there's no monsters. Everything is nuanced, except for the Gorn. They're just pure evil. He says something very similar to that.
Yeah.
And that would have been around the time that they were, getting ready to shoot this episode, I believe, when they would have recorded that interview last year, because they were shooting season 2 when season 1 was being released. So maybe that is true. I've thought about that also. Like, yeah, what if he is just trying to like, get us all thinking that? But there's also a part of me that thinks like, oh no, what if Akiva Goldsman actually, and I'm not even gonna say like that's necessarily wrong. Like maybe in Star Trek there should be like what if there's like that one race that you can't, they're just not going to comprehend anything we would consider like decent or moral or
I mean,
right or
it's how
good. Like,
audiences feel about the xenomorphs, I think. They're fascinating and interesting in the Aliens movies, but we kind of all sort of feel like that you get away from them or you destroy them. Nobody is watching Aliens saying, like, I wish they were working more to communicate with them. We all love when Ripley says nuke them from orbit because they seem so just like, it's just like, it
Sigourney
is.
Weaver didn't love that. She wanted Ripley to like have
Really?
sympathy for them, and James Cameron was like, "No, we're not doing that. You hate these things," because she's like a big animal person, I guess.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Yeah, I think in the end Cameron was probably right, and because he was also doing, I know
Yeah.
at least a partial Vietnam allegory, and the way we in war authorize the enemy, of course, that's a reflection of that. But yeah, here's the thing: even if he is doing this to kind of pull a reveal in the third season, I think that's kind of slightly dirty pool too. Don't play at this. Kind of don't try and trick the audience. I'm sometimes for surprises. I do kind of like that. But I don't think I want him just straight up making up philosophies of Trek that sometimes a monster is just a monster. Um, if they're just for a reveal, it's kind of disappointing.
The crate that Chief J beams in that has like all of like the Gorn weapons and stuff in it.
Yep.
I don't know like does it make more sense that Starfleet would like want to train officers on that stuff, or does it make more sense that it'd be like, for captain's eyes only? Because maybe they don't want like everyone hearing about like, oh, like they're like gearing up to like fight the Gorn. Maybe they don't want
Right,
like
sort of
Gorn
a
intelligence.
we're going to start moving these out. Maybe next year we'll begin training, but we don't want to cause a panic. I
Yeah.
think it's reasonable. It's a little convenient and just kind of let's give a cool surprise. They've got anti-Gorn gear. I can roll with that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
I thought it was pretty forgivable, but then like right after that, I'm already starting to like question the writing a little bit at this point. And then right
Mm-hmm.
after that, they have this display that where they're trying to chart a course. How can we sneak to the planet without the Gorn detecting us? And then Ortega's the pilot who like would know like all the navigational stuff is looking at what's clearly a debris field from the Cayuga. Like I would like instantly understood that looking at it, and she says, "Hey, what's all this stuff?" And I'm like, why does she not know what debris is? Why not have her just say like, "Hey, what about this debris field?" I know like they got to explain it
Right.
to the audience, but like you can explain it without making her sound dumb. So that bugged me
Yeah,
too.
I guess when you don't know what other, there could be, a pocket of partially formed planet. There could be a little mini asteroid field or something. I guess there might be reasons for it. It,
I
it
like
didn't bother me. Sometimes if something is clearly meant to be audience exposition, I don't mind it too much as long as I get what you're saying, but I don't think it made her look too bad. It's just exposition.
I liked the character moment after that when Pike is like, "Well, we could use you to do this. You've been begging for a landing party mission for months," and then she's just kind of like, "Yeah, why was I doing that?" I like that. It was a believable way to get some levity into like this really serious story, and I also kind of like the idea of whenever it's like, "I'm gonna do this really dangerous thing against orders, and I'm only gonna take volunteers," and then Una is like, "I think I speak for the entire crew when I say we're all with you." So I kind of like there being someone who's like, actually, I'm really terrified of this. I'm not sure if I want to do it. I like that, but of course she does it, and they do the Empire Strikes Back thing. We've kind of all seen 100 times. Just like float around in the space junk. Just you blend in with all the rest of the
I'm
trash.
glad that they didn't feel the urge to say some line that was an homage to Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, instead they point out zombie movies, and I like that funny exchange
That's a little
when
weird. That's actually not. I mean, like when I think of zombie movie tropes, I don't actually very often think of people who try and disguise themselves as zombies. It only comes up occasionally, and
that happened in The Walking Dead in the comic, and then I think they did it in the show also.
they
Uh,
did. But even then, like it didn't work very well. It was
hmm.
like it was in episode 2 or something. Uh, but I was like, I can't really think of any other zombie movies. Maybe the guy who says Imhotep in The Mummy.
But Uhura's a movie buff, I guess, because she was talking about movies before when she was talking in the crossover episode at the end. She's talking about like scheduling the next movie night. She wanted to
Yeah.
program an Endorian comedy, I believe. An Endorian.
maybe Maybe Fatheree should be like the Orville, where every single movie they watch is something from like the 1980s.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's funny.
uh,
Well, like on Enterprise, all their movies are older than that.
yeah, no, it was just Seth MacFarlane. Just he always just used the stuff he liked. Um, but that's interesting about her. I wonder if they'll want to follow up with that and show us some movie nights. Um,
I
I
mean,
kind
that's
of
the
like
thing.
that.
Trip Tucker loved movies. Tom Paris watched movies. It's not a universal thing, but there's
Mm.
people who, I guess it'd be more of a niche thing. It'd be like crocheting or I don't know, like something like that. But I loved Spock's line to Una when she's like, "Have you ever seen one? A zombie? No. A movie? Yes." That sounded so Spock. There's a couple
Yeah,
lines like that are like spot on, like TOS Spock.
yeah.
There's also like a couple that sounded very like unspock, and I kind of felt sorry for Ethan Peck for having to like try to make it sound as Spock as possible. Like when he's saying stuff like we have to take out what does he say? He's like, we have to take it out, and I'm the only one who can pull it off. And it's just like that. You should have just been like, I'm the only one who can accomplish this, or something like. Didn't sound. It sounded like modern day talk
Pull it
a bit
off, yeah,
much.
is not the
Yeah.
kind of. It's a little too colloquial for Spock. That popped out at me too. I definitely noticed that. And since we presume he's trying to rein in his human side right now because he feels like that he exposed himself by doing that with Christine,
Hmm.
it would make more sense for him to say something very
Yeah, you
Spock-like.
should be like doubling down on the
I agree.
Vulcanness, and I
And I
think that's
also,
what
by
we'll
the
get
way,
in season 3.
yeah, I think so. I hope that what do you call it? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Shit.
Zombies, Ortega's Empire Strikes Back.
No, it's the thing with Spock. I kind of wish he had said, instead of like, and his ship of really highly specialized and very well trained people, the notion that he's the only one who can do this is maybe a little iffy. I almost wish he would have said, he's like, as part of my Vulcan training, he's like, I can make calculations at a higher rate, mathematical calculations than anyone on the ship, or because we've done this mathematical test. Just some one single line about why.
I'm fine with him. Just he's the strongest person on the ship. He's the only Vulcan. He's the only one strong enough. I'm fine with that.
It's I don't know. It seemed a little. I was like, come on. There's a lot of specialists on this. They're not.
Yeah, but
this is not.
He said it had to be someone strong enough to handle those rockets.
Oh, did he say that? Like strong enough, like physically strong?
Yeah. He said it was a nigh impossible task for any human.
There's no weight in space.
That's what I was thinking, but
you do, if something is heavy, like you can go up to the space shuttle and push it. It has a lot of mass. So, but I guess if those things have a lot of mass,
maybe if you have it like spinning around, it'd be hard to get it to stop or something. I don't know. But
yeah,
we'll have to ask Dr. Erin McDonald about. Maybe they consulted with her, or maybe they didn't consult with her and should have. But that was my understanding of the dialogue. But yeah, I like Aaron's explanation in the chat a bit more. If he was the only one who could calculate the slingshot effect, but it sounded like Palea had already worked out the math on the Enterprise. But maybe he needed to make like some final adjustments. He had to get on the saucer and actually scan up close to the tricorder to figure out the exact mass and damage and structural integrity, and had to make some last minute fine.
It's that thing where Next Generation probably went overboard in that sort of explanation sometimes. But what I wouldn't mind is just a line or two that kind of just help us along that direction. That's why, part of why it sort of felt like, a little retrograde to have both Pike and Spock getting out there to try and rescue their women. It felt like old school sci-fi, a little more sexist sci-fi. And Spock saying something like, only I can do this. That's the kind of thing that was also said in those shows. Fatheree, you're on mute.
Sorry. My no, never mind. Ortega's has like the shuttle drop, fall, descent. Yeah, we'll go with descent. Dave, I don't know if you know this, but she's really good at flying the ship. Like, she's born to do that.
I think they're going to mention that maybe a little too often now. Way back in, I guess, the trailer for the season.
This is like the first thing we saw of season 2.
They showed this, and I did not like this scene. It's a hacky cliche that was in another visual cliche that was in another Star Trek movie. What was that? Into Darkness, with the opening where they, I think they go off the ledge.
They jump off a cliff.
Did they do it in 2 of them? Did they do it not only when they came out of the ocean to rescue Spock, but also when they had to drag the ship out of Idris Elba's base or whatever, and it goes like falling, and then they have to hit a certain speed, and then they can fly it or something like that. I feel like
the Franklin, when like they had well, that was, they were trying to like swoop up to like,
right, but I feel like they filmed it the same way both times. It looks like they crashed. Oh, they didn't crash.
Who was the first one that looked like they crashed in the?
I think that something like that happened when like Spock and Kirk and them they're like escaping, and they just like leap off the side of a cliff or something, and then the Enterprise rises with them.
Spock. I'm sorry. Kirk and McCoy dive into the ocean from a cliff.
Yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking of. But
they swim to the Enterprise.
Very commonly, it's a falling ship of some sort, and I've seen it in other movies. They probably did it in Top Gun Maverick at some point.
When we were talking about more Ortegas, I don't think we wanted them to like tell us about her flying the ship more and more. I actually think, Dave, that they're not going to kill Batel because they've drawn that out too long.
I think so too. That's part of the reason why.
I think it's going to be a bait and switch. I think they're going to kill someone else.
Oh.
Possibly La'an, possibly Ortega's.
Yeah, where was it? I saw this. Maybe this is. I might be giving a preview of our subspace transmissions, but somewhere I saw somebody say that they are in a state of fear for everyone who's not a legacy character, because we know that they are all potentially disposable, and so there's like 5 of them or so, and I'm like, yeah, I get that. You think La'an or Ortegas?
Oh, I mean, we don't know their fates, so...
Right, but it could be... Peli, I guess, could walk on and get killed a few episodes later.
It would... Just with, like, the way that they're treating Ortega's by, like, not giving her a lot of development, but just, like, reminding us that, like, oh, like, you know, everyone kind of likes her, and she's the best at flying the ship. Just, like... It's like... Oh, like, y'all aren't wanting to invest too much into her because, like, you know you're about to offer, but you still want us to, like her and care about her, like, when that happens.
Right.
So I think it could be with her, or like also like La'an, like they wrapped up her thing with Kirk possibly, and she's like had like this arc where she's like, you know what, I finally got over all this lifelong trauma that I've had, and then she dies.
It would be really messed. Those would honestly both be kind of messed up, but I would hope that they know that there's other ways for a character to exit a dramatic arc, a series, than death.
Yeah,
I really hope
they
that's
want
the
the
case.
Gorn to be the big bad. They want the Gorn to be like their Borg. They want what the Borg were for TNG. They want the Gorn to be that for Strange New Worlds.
Right, and you know, if they wanted Leon doing that, could be a, you know, number one, you once saved me from them, and I'm gonna pass that on. I'm gonna, now it's my turn to help somebody. It could work dramatically decently, but I hope they're not doing it, because La'an, I think, has become one of the more interesting characters, and I want to see her continue to grow. But, you know, if Ortegas goes, what are they, you know, is it Sulu time? Is that what I'm...
Or they just put, like, number 1 back at the helm.
Yeah.
Which we see her do that a little here.
That would be somewhat interesting, because it would kind of give her a little bit more more to do, help her define her character.
I don't know if Martin Quinn as Scotty is coming back as a series regular next year. They haven't said. But if he is, it might be like, oh, they're getting rid of someone else to make room for him. But speaking of La'an, she does get some Gorn action. She finally kills a Gorn, I guess, like with a
one shot.
The phasers were harmless to the Gorn and All Those Who Wonder, and so here, like, the calibrations, the adjustments seem to work. They seem to be effective, and this is when Pike kind of shows like a little bit of optimism and hopefulness when he's like, oh, well, you know, if we're not used to like the Gorn behaving this way, they're working together instead of competing. There's clearly a lot we don't understand about them. Maybe we can find a way to reach them. And La'an kind of pushes back and is like, yeah, like, you're always like so hopeful, and you know, it's. I think they balance that line well of like making him like the pure, you know, optimist, kind of a bleeding heart type, but without making him too naive.
Yeah, and I think that's good to do. I think those are okay story places for him to be going. That's good stuff. By the way, somebody though, I think, you know, since they were so Gorn kill happy, somebody should have gone up and given her a pat on the shoulder. That was one hit kill. Good job, as long as we're considering them monsters.
Yeah,
because you know, it's also like, good job killing that baby, Leon.
They are like so ugly. Like the design, the design they were going for. It's almost kind of like how Kirk described the Gorn in Arena, where he's like, you know, like as any human, I'm obviously hardwired to be, you know, disgusted with the sight of like this, you know, cold-blooded reptile type ugly creature. And the Gorn definitely like embody that description more than the rubber suit did. The Gorn younglings we see, right? I still fucking hate that they're called younglings.
Is that like used anywhere in life?
No, we talked about this last year. Like I said, I dare someone out there to find 3 uses of that. I don't even think there's one, but just I'll just go ahead. Okay, someone probably said it in like the 70s or something. Find me 3 uses of that word that predate the Star Wars prequels, and so far no one has even brought up one.
I'm
So
gonna have to Google it later because I don't think I even Googled it once. But I'm like, do they call like baby insects that? I don't think they do. I think they're called nymphs and stuff like
I
that.
mean, I kind of checked out of the other Star franchise when they started like having heroes murder younglings. So, uh,
That's you, Fatheree. That
um,
that made me like it
but
more.
I don't like it that we're murdering younglings in Star Trek now. So
I yeah, it's another one of those things that's kind of weird. Like it kind of only works if we would consider them monsters. I did remember on the Ready Room though they said that they had these really nice kind of retro 50s sets and then just drenched them in blood for these sequences.
yeah, it kind of looks like they're going to like a haunted house or something.
Hmm.
Like when they go, they find Scotty's Gorn trap, and we get the first appearance of Martin Quinn as Scotty, Montgomery Scott, played by an actual Scottish actor for the first time ever. What did you think? I knew about this. I found out about this before it happened. I didn't tell
Uh,
anyone.
Good.
What did you
I
think?
wanted to ask you if you knew about that, and I wanted to know if you knew about the to be continued.
I did know about the to be continued, but I
Mm.
kind of suspected it about uh 2/3 of the way into this episode. But
Yeah, yeah, definitely. As it was, I think I was, yeah, 2/3 point. That's about right. When I started thinking it's going to be tough to wrap up some of this stuff.
it's funny because
Um,
that was something I speculated the season one finale. I was like, they're gonna bring back the Star Trek season cliffhangers, but they didn't until but season two they did.
I think I'm pretty much all team positivity about Scotty. I thought his portrayal was
Mhm.
good. I liked that he came out immediately as the kind of this is a Scotty who thinks on his feet, who works with what he's got, and is a bit of a miracle worker. Kind of a little lightly comedic in his portrayal. But yeah, the same kind of qualities that make O'Brien cool too. These are
Mhm.
the two engineers I most want, I think, around to get me out of a weird jam.
Yeah, I really liked Martin Quinn's Scotty, and I only have one. I wouldn't even call it a complaint, just I don't know, like a concern. Is that I would have loved him as like a young Scotty. He's a bit too young to be Scotty in 2259. This is just
Right.
this is only 6 years before we see him in the original series,
He had
and
like a
it's
little bit of like he had a little like gray hair in that or white hair, right?
not his hair is like pretty dark, but I mean like he he
Okay.
he, he looked like a dude who was like well over 40.
Right.
Um and it's going to be awkward if we see him next to Paul Wesley because at this point in the timeline, Scotty's supposed to be 37 and Kirk is supposed to be 26, and they kind of look the other way. Like Paul Wesley kind of looks like he's 37, and Martin Quinn kind of looks like he's 26. But I mean, like, it's not
Yeah.
a huge deal. They're both really good in the roles, even though like I didn't love Kirk immediately in season one, but I damn sure do after season two. And hey, Scotty, I already liked him, immediately right off the bat with this scene. So I can forgive them hiring a young looking dude. Some people age weirdly. It might be a rough 5 years. But he seems a little too youthful, I guess, in like his behavior. I mean, he's only a lieutenant junior grade, so he's hasn't moved too far up the, but I think maybe he's just like so like eccentric and like doing like weird experiments and stuff, like he keeps like getting in trouble, kind of like
No,
Kelvin.
he's
Kelvin Scotty was a
yeah, he's beaming
troublemaker.
beagles around.
Yeah, so maybe he's doing some of that in the prime timeline too. I mean, Palea's remarks would kind of support that. And it was also kind of weird. I get like, okay, he's from Scotland. He's British. He's gonna have like British pronunciations. But
Lieutenant.
we've never had any like Alexander Sadig didn't say lieutenant, but yeah, when he's like, but it is like it's funny. It made me laugh because I was thinking like when uh Pike is like, this is, Lieutenant Lan Noonien Singh. This is Lieutenant Ortega's. I was kind of thinking like, there's a lot of lieutenants on this show. So then when he's like, that's a lot of lieutenant, or that's a lot of lieutenants. I was like, yeah, it is. So I was having like the same thought.
You know what? Weirdly, Fathery, I want them to in some way bring in just acknowledging some parallels with elements of the Kelvinverse timeline. I want them to bring in his short friend Keenser, who
Um,
admittedly was just a visual joke in those movies, but I want them to find that and do something with it.
when we did a Tex-Trek number 1, 7 years ago,
Yeah,
you asked me, who did I think was the Jar Jar of Star Trek, and I said
yeah,
Kinzer.
yeah. That's
And
fair. I'm pretty
then you
sure
told
at
me
the
he didn't
time.
count because he is or he's Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Um,
I was right. I think I probably at the time said like Neelix, or I remember I was like throwing out a few names as I recall, like Neelix
you
and
said we talked about Neelix, and you said also Luoxana Troy.
yeah, yeah. That was before I'd seen her in at least one like well, she has I think one really pretty good episode of Next Generation and one great episode or very good episode of Deep Space Nine. I hadn't seen that one yet.
I'm beaten up on a little bit of the writing in this episode, but I do want to say one thing that made me very happy was that the show clearly wanted to kind of telegraph Batel's danger, her jeopardy. That was intentional. Like we were thinking about this, weeks ago. Like, oh my god, what if this spells danger for Batel? When I was like, oh, they're gonna do like a serious relationship, and then they're gonna do like this big Gorn episode. I mean, the episode opens with a Gorn ship appearing at the planet she's on. So clearly, the intent is for us to be worried and stressed about Batel. So that was all intentional. That does make me feel like a lot better about the writing. And yeah, it was effective in this episode. Like, we don't know, is she going to be one of the survivors, is she not? And then kind of breathe a little sigh of relief when you see her, and then you're like, oh shit, I thought we were safe. And it kind of hits harder later when we find out about her infection.
Right, right.
But she's pretty active in the story here. She's side by side with Pike. Scotty's explaining the intel that he brings from from his ship, the Star Diver, and is talking about the CMEs and how these, they did set up like the weird light thing in Memento Mori, how the Gorn ships communicated.
Mm-hmm.
So they I don't know if I'm gonna like what they've thought out, and it might have too much xenomorph in it. But
Mm-hmm.
there is like a little bit of effort behind the scenes that's obvious. They are trying to plan things, coordinate things. Even the special effects guys on the Ready Room talked about how like they had to go back and forth with the writers about like, well, what's the actual adult Gorn? What's like their their culture, their physiology, like all that stuff. We need to have it all defined so that we know how to build up to it. And if they're doing that on the effects front, I'm sure they're doing that in the writers' room as well, and that they're going to build up to something that they've planned that
Mm-hmm.
hopefully has a logic to it. Not sure if I'll like it, but it seems like they're putting in an effort on that front.
I did think that Pike, arguably him going down on such a dangerous mission was a bit of a stretch as to what a captain should be doing, even within Star Trek
It's
parameters.
yeah, I mean, like, it's Star Trek, so
Pretty dangerous. But then when he was like, "I'm going to go off on this secret mission," me, the leader, I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea, bro. It's I was a rare case. Normally, I'm okay with this trope and I just roll with it. But the idea of him just sneaking off in the middle of the night when he's really the man with the plan, he's in a possible wartime situation. They might need to, keep tensions from spoiling over into a full blown intergalactic
they
war.
have Batel there.
Like he probably shouldn't go on a secret mission.
Um I
But
I
yeah, but
disagree with that. Like they have
well,
like
both
Batel.
captains went on it too. That's nuts.
Oh yeah, that is true. I was thinking like he would probably like want to take Mbenga with. I mean, like, I know my instinct would be like, man, I should ask Mbenga to go with me. They're like, well, they need a doctor here, so
You know what he should have been? He should be like, you know what I need? The Butcher of Jagal.
actually, like, he should have brought Laan is what I would have done. But
Yeah, that she's proven adept. But right, we know this is kind of Trek trope stuff, and it's him being kind of self-sacrificing and wanting to doing a thing that a lot of times Kirk did too, which is like he's like I'm gonna take this risk because I know it's a high risk.
another thing I'll say about like the some consistency in the writing and some things that they've kind of planned and built up and fleshed out. The show has done a lot of showing but not telling, but they've just showed in scenes of like who is talking to each other that Ortega's and Mbenga are Chapel's besties. They're who
Mm-hmm.
she hangs out with. they're always, joking around in sick bay and stuff. And she, goes and drinks in the bar with Ortega's. And so I kind of like having the two of them just, showing their concern. It's not just Spock who's worried for Chapel and
Right.
Benga, and Ortega's are too. And when they
It's a
leave
good
to
scene.
go when they leave to go to the shuttle, I thought it was funny how like Battelle is like, "Oh, Chris, if you're going, I'm going too." And then Scotty is like, "Oh, if y'all are going, I'm going too." It's just like everyone's
Yeah,
just like waking up, but they
I sort
call
of
it out, and he's
appreciated.
like,
He's like,
"Yeah, it's,
y'all were having your secret meeting like 2 feet from me.
yeah, like this is literally my sleeping spot. Like I've been sleeping here like all week. Like, uh, not my fault. Y'all did it right here." And then we get the Alien 3 thing where
Yep.
the Gorn baby. Did you catch this immediately when it happened? When like the Gorn and Battelle come face to face, like they're about to kiss, and then it doesn't bite. It like runs away.
No, I thought this was going to be what I was really hoping more that it would be, some intimation that the Gorn aren't, that maybe their kill mode can turn off because of like environmental factors. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, they're getting there. And it looks like whatever they're going to do with that, we're not going to find out till next season.
Mm.
And yes, so I did not think of what it was. Even though what did that happen in? So that's right. That was an Alien 3. It could have like killed her, but then it like just scampers off, right?
Yeah. Um, that's funny because when I saw this scene, I was like, "Oh, she's probably pregnant with Gorn, like in Alien 3." And I bet Dave caught that because I know for a fact he just watched Alien 3 not that long ago.
I'm a big dingus, Fathery. Yeah,
No,
no.
you're just
What
wrapped up in the other stuff.
I saw what I wanted to see a little bit in it, and
Mm.
also what I thought that they were maybe setting up. We'll see.
But I kind of like Battelle just I get her having a say and her being like, look, like let me go do this dangerous stuff. I need to go on these dangerous missions. I still have like a day and a half. I can still be useful. You know what? Let me just take this device in to be the fake Gorn transponder. I'll get in your shuttle. I'll crash it. I'll do the kamikaze mission, and then you can beam up. And that all makes sense. Fortunately, she ends up not having to do that. I don't know if you're ready to talk about the stuff going on back on the Enterprise with
Yeah, yeah,
Spock
sure.
and Una. Uh, Spock doesn't want to give up hope on Chapel on the Cayuga, and he's like, "Well, there's pockets of oxygen over there," and but I like that they're having to just use like visual things, like their scanners are severely dampened because of the interference field, so they have to like just sit there and wait for the saucer to spin around to get like a look at sick bay, and then when they do, it's like that entire chunk of the saucer is gone.
Right.
Um, and Una trying like they don't give Rebecca Romaine a ton in this episode, but she makes the most of her moments. I liked her trying to comfort Spock.
Yeah, it's one of those things that just, in some ways, it also just reminds me. I wish she had, you know, more time this season. She had one very notable episode in episode 2, and then she's had some interesting scenes. She seemed to indicate she was really trying to change how she interacted with people, and kind of maybe how she practiced being a first officer in the musical episode. And I was like, all right, let's start seeing it. Let's go. And they haven't really shown us that, which that would have been a bit of continuity I would have liked. I will say, by the way, I did like Pike mentioning the musical thing, where he's like, "Oh, I haven't broken out in song in the last 24
Yeah.
hours."
I like
So
that just to
I liked it.
like confirm like they still remember that. Like that was an actual
Yep,
event that happened in
they're like,
history.
that was
It
one
is
of the
recorded.
craziest things that ever
It's
happened,
something
but
that Mariner and Boimler will talk about in Lower Deck season 5. They'll be like, "Remember that time everyone on the Enterprise started singing?"
what Mariner and Boimler need to talk about is things like, how was it? How did it work that we would sometimes form a chorus with people in completely different sections of the ship? Um, but yeah, there's you could start poking at logistics.
What do you think of the Palea and Uhura stuff? When Uhura just has theories all the time. This is the second episode of the season when she's like, "I have a theory," but we're talking about like Buffy references. Um, but Palea's kind of like dismissive of her at first. But then, I don't know. What did you think about their scene together? We hadn't seen them
um,
interact much before.
yeah. What was Uhura's theory? Was this the thing that's on the far side of the planet, the tower?
Yeah, she wants to crash into that green tower thing, and
Yeah,
that'll bring down the interference field. She
you
just
know
needed an
what?
engineer to do the math on it.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I liked it because I like when you sometimes put together people who just don't otherwise get a lot of screen time together, and you just kind of see, oh, what are these personalities like in conjunction? How do they interact? Um, the I guess Uhura's like she's good at putting communications up. She's good at bringing communications down.
No, it makes sense for the communications officer and the engineer to be, using those skill sets. So I like that they're kind of doing the ensemble thing, getting everyone involved in the big finale. They escalate the stakes by having like more and more Gorn ships show up, and Una telling Spock like, "Well, I can't make the red alert any more of a red alert," you know. Um, But then, yeah, Spock does. His actual line is, placing those rockets is a near impossible task. No human can do this. I, however, can. Which I thought that does sound like pretty Spock. But then later he's like, further, I am the only member of the crew who can pull this off. And I was like, well, that's not quite great. But
Yep.
when we get to the Cayuga, and let's talk about like Chapel and the rockets and the spacesuit fight and the saucer crash, but I loved that like beautiful cross-section view of a Constitution class saucer.
Hmm.
I have the old AMT model that they did. That's like an actual cross section
Oh,
where you can
yeah,
see
yeah.
into it like this, and yeah, I just like seeing like these shapes and stuff. But yeah, that looked so good. So much of the effects in this episode were really stunning and cinematic.
I
Um,
think the kind of the big budget that they've got for modern Trek TV is at its best for me when it makes it feel like this cool sandbox to be immersed in, and you really feel like, oh, that would be so amazing to be on this planet, or to see that site. Although also horrific in this one. I mean, that is a dead battleship, or not battleship, but a dead starship that once was home to a few hundred at least.
They
Um,
were home to every single person on that ship except for the one who we knew was going to survive, who had plot armor, and just for whatever reason, everyone else died except for her. She just beamed up just in time to be the only person to not die.
yeah,
That
I
was
don't know. You know
that
what's
was weird.
funny? I don't know quite why, but it didn't particularly bother me. Maybe it's because I know that a lot of times they will dress up stuff when like they'll throw out dialogue about how she's like, maybe there's some other people that could be saved, or somehow explain how only she survived. But in the end, what we care about is the characters we know, and everybody else is kind of just set dressing. That's just kind of the nature of drama. A lot of dramas that we care about those people, and otherwise a ship could blow up, and it doesn't mean a whole lot to us. But that is some Kelvin action movie stuff there.
It would have made more sense to have Scotty on the Cayuga and he survives because he did like some crazy engineering thing or something. But it's just, I guess, just Chapel's blind luck. Like she beamed
I
up and
mean,
immediately ran to the safest part of the ship that no one else was in.
yeah, they were trying to make it work so that she and Spock, it was built.
Right,
The scene was built to get them together.
right. Um, yeah, it's like a lot of convenient stuff. Like I
It
and I
was
would
very convenient.
I would accept a lot of it. Like it'd be like, okay, she just happens to be like near the window where she can see the Enterprise. Spock just happens to pass by that same window on his way to the saucer. I would forgive that, but it's like her being like the sole survivor. The first time I was watching this, I was like, oh, there's a lot of people on there, and this is so cool. Chapel's gonna like restore life support. She's like, oh, I got 1 hour life support. I can work with that. And she's about to be like this medical badass, like go around treating people. And it was like, no, she's just like the only person who lived for no reason other than just pure luck, I suppose. Maybe in season 2 they'll be like, "Oh, this is why Chapel survived," but I'm not holding my breath for that one. That's a
You
lot
know
of
the
time to
ja-
hold your breath, anyways. But
the jackets, by the way, she's got. I say this just because you've had some screenshots up of the scene. The jackets that they wear that are what? They're away team jackets. What
yeah,
are those supposed
first
to be?
first introduced in season 1, episode 3, Ghost of Illyria.
They do look cool, but they also look like Star Wars Imperial officer jackets or
Oh, I
something.
don't get those vibes. I think they look cool. I think they're based on the field
Well, I mean, I
jackets from
think
the
they look
Menagerie.
cool. I think they look cool, but I also think the fact that they're black,
There's
like just
they're gray, but there's a precedent
are they?
for them in Star Trek.
Oh, what's the precedent?
The field jackets in the Menagerie.
Oh, right, right, yeah, yeah. It's just the sort of the they look like a little like fascist jackets to me. It can't help when you get dark enough to look slightly Nazi. In the sunlight here, yeah, they look better as gray.
Yeah.
Actually, I think they look cool as black too. But then it suddenly starts when they're in dark lighting and they look black to me. Then they look Nazi jacket. But Nazis had stylish visuals. It was part of their propaganda.
Yeah, I don't get Nazi vibes. They're more
Well,
like
you know what,
a
Father? You know why I'm thinking it? She has short blonde hair, like the short blonde hair of the Imperial officer in the game. What was that Jedi
oh,
game where you're the train
Force Unleashed.
the yeah disciple of Vader? Yeah, there's a notable supporting character who's a female Imperial officer in it, and she looks kind of close to her. That's why it's sticking in my head now that I think about it.
I thought Spock looked really badass in his environmental suit and the rockets and all of that stuff. So
Juno Eclipse, by the way, that's the name. Anyway, yeah, I actually thought like as an action sequence, this was pretty cool stuff. I liked seeing the debris field. We've seen debris fields before in Star Wars, from the going back to the asteroid scene and other stuff. But I thought this was a kind of a unique spin on it, like they were doing something a little bit different. I liked seeing
I
a maneuver in there, but kind of like you would see the Gorn like scan beam, like kind of just hitting nearby objects, and you'd get that sense that one wrong move and it might spot you.
speaking of the Gorn,
Hmm.
the we get our first look at an adult Gorn in I guess it's in a Gorn environmental suit. But yeah, Chapel sees the Gorn trying to hack the computer, and I guess that's what he's doing. You hear the computer voice saying, wrong command code or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, what did you think about this reveal of this creature?
Arguably, by the way, that's the least bestial thing that they've done is him trying to hack something. Um, and I thought they looked cool. Hulking, weird, kind of hanging from the ceiling, or zero G suspended anyway. Um, and I like the idea of seeing a Gorn in a pressure suit, flight suit, whatever you call it.
It's a cool design, and like the environmental suit looks cool, but I was disappointed when I saw the face. It wouldn't be recognizable as Gorn to me. But it's a lot like the Gorn from the Kelvin video game that I know you played.
Hmm.
It's a bit, like those Gorn had tells, like the Arena Gorn didn't have a tell. So
But the
instead of like,
Enterprise Gorn had a tail.
mm-mm. Did it?
Yeah,
Maybe it did.
it swept. I think it swept Archer off his
Oh,
feet.
yeah,
It was clearly
it
Raptor
hung low.
inspired.
It hung low like a T-Rex kinda, I think.
Right.
Um,
Here it's a
it,
little weird because you see it in zero G, and so it does coil around, and
mm.
it can't help but be a little reminiscent of the xenomorph tail, and of course,
Yeah, sadly, too reminiscent. Like I feel like they add like the spikes to it, which feel like really like impractical for an environmental suit, but like it makes it look a lot more like a xenomorph.
right.
So
Yeah, it has kind of like a biological sort of look to it, so that it looks, yeah, it looks close to like H.R. Geiger's morphish type stuff. But I think I was just enjoying the sheer big physicality of it. Pretty good special effects. Yeah, I want a Gorn whose lizard face looks a little bit more like the TOS lizard face. But
yeah, I want like those like dead eyes that have like no emotion. Like if
yeah,
they really want to
yeah,
make something like make like those dead eyes work on a modern design.
a doll's eyes, Chief. Jaws. They but and I thought this was a good action sequence that followed. I kind of liked their little zero G shootout and stuff when
Yeah,
Spock
no,
got on board.
this whole like the whole like Spock spacesuit stuff, like all of it, like even though like I don't like the Gorn design or a lot of the Gorn stuff, I do dislike, but I do enjoy the way that all of this was like shot and edited, and I love the music, that how they kind of did like this like dark suspenseful variation on like those opening four notes of the Star Trek theme.
Yeah, yeah.
I also like, I liked it like cutting back and forth to Una like nervously watching in Spock's scanner, and you hear like the TOS sound effects. All of this stuff, like, it came together really well for, and like I said, even though I know Chapel and Spock survived a TOS, I was still kind of on the edge of my seat watching
Hmm.
all of this. And I like Spock has like a hand to hand, even though it's weird for him to be encountering the Gorn here, but I like, oh yeah, like Spock has like a kind of a hand to hand fight with a Gorn, and it's still a dude in a suit, and I did think that it, I don't know, I just think back to like Leonard Nimoy talking about how when he saw a script and it called for Spock to knock someone out with a karate chop, and or
Hmm.
punch him in the face or knock him out or something, and he was like, oh, Spock would have like a more like elegant intellectual solution. He would use like a this weird nerve pinch or something. And I am disappointed that here Spock has to resort to just, oh, I'm just gonna stab it in the face like a
Right.
caveman would solve this problem.
Kelvin stuff.
Yeah, but it was suspenseful. He like grabs the tail with one hand. I was like, man, that'd be ballsy. Like grab this Gorn's tail. Like that'd be terrifying. And then
Yeah.
like just hope I can stab through the helmet and get this guy. Um,
Hmm.
and Chapel watching with the phaser and all of that. Her like floating. Like can she grab the phaser in time? It was very well put together. Um, and even like the Gorn's death, how it's like struggling and uh, I guess probably terrified as all the air is leaving its lungs.
Yeah, for just a minute while I was watching that, I was like, is this scene going to inadvertently kind of draw sympathy? Because it's hard to watch anything, even a scary thing, breathe its last gasps in a panic and die. And I was like, okay, I think they made it like grisly enough that you might have just a little bit of sympathy, but not, they didn't linger on it so much that they made them non-monstrous yet.
And this is what I was talking about with kind of like that frustration where like you're just not feeling the moment. Like I love Spock and Chapel, and I still kind of thought it looked really cool, like the way like the two of them like float out of the saucer and they watch it crash and like they hold hands. I thought that was sweet, but it's like, man, like it would have been so much more enjoyable for me if I was like on board with the story they were telling. Like this would
Right.
have hit so hard, since such a diehard like Spock and Chapel fan.
I actually think that as I've thought about this, is that them holding hands was almost, well, it's the kind of thing you might do instinctively for sure. Like they had just survived something
Mm-hmm.
and
They also don't want to like float away from each
they
other,
had their
so.
reprieve, but I kind of think I would have rather it just be a little bit more realistic survival where they just like have a hand clamped on to the you know backpack or whatever of the other person, and they're just still looking a little terrified and freaked out about it all. Um, but visually, I'm like, I've never really quite seen something like that.
Yeah.
We've seen a saucer section go into an atmosphere, we've seen it blow up, but I haven't seen it just kind of dropping away from you like that, as almost as if you had released it and going down, picking up all that atmosphere. I sort of was hoping, they cut to down on the surface where it looked like it was like half a mile from Pike, and I was like, I feel like this would make like a big nuclear explosion level explosion. I kind of wish that they had let it do that, and that tower had been farther from them so they could go ahead and let that thing just light up a whole chunk of continent.
I don't know if like a saucer would cause that big of a thing, but it would
I
definitely be
don't
like
know.
a
I
big
was just
crater.
thinking. I was just thinking, if nothing else, like, I mean, the sheer size of it, but it probably wouldn't have a ton of velocity. It's not like an asteroid coming in that's going at like thousands of miles an hour. But I just assumed that there's some kind of dilithium antimatter shit in there.
That's
I
all in
don't
the
know.
secondary hull.
Is there nothing at all in there? There's got to be some kind of gasoline.
Um,
I don't know.
like there's nothing established I can think of that would be like a hyper explosive, but in
Okay.
the
Well, I
saucer.
like
But I
action
mean, there
movies where
there could
things
be. You could
explode.
you could mix. You could put some. There's like a backup reactor or something in there
There
if you
you
if you
go. I'm
want.
thinking of. I must be thinking of the Battle Bridge.
But
Um,
that's in the secondary hull too. The saucer
what's
is
it?
mainly just like the bridge, and then like a bunch of like crew quarters and like the ready room and sick bay, and like most of like the high tech stuff is down in the secondary hull.
Joel points out if the saucer was in orbit, it would have to be going at least 25,000 miles an hour. Um, and what is it? What's that stuff that I forget what you call it, where you drop like a chunk of steel from space and you just let it fall and it
Oh,
creates.
mass driver. Is
I
that
guess
or
I
no?
guess it's
That's when you project something with like a rail gun thing, right? Or no,
it's
no, mass
kind of
drive. That's what they called it in Babylon 5. It was mass drivers. Yeah.
is that what it is? But yeah, I think those things are have the potential to be hugely destructive. I think this would be too, but Trek is
Well,
realistic to a
it would
point.
depend on how much of it like holds together and like the weight of it and stuff. Like all that
Yeah,
stuff that you're talking about, like they drop things that are like extremely dense. Like
yeah.
they wouldn't have like as
I mean,
Spock says,
like
like
these
these little
holes are
pockets of oxygen.
at least meant to be able to take some phaser shots without shields sometimes, or some to not to have it just go right through them. So there's probably some pretty dense stuff on the outside, but yeah, very hollow in, and I know Trek is realistic to a degree. So mostly I actually was watching that scene and I was like, that's pretty cool. I think I was more on board than you were, Fatheree. At this point, I was like, I don't know if the thing had been revealed about um, what do you call it, Battelle yet, but
Yeah,
I
they
was
already knew that she had the. Well, it was right around that time when she was like, I let me kamikaze this thing. And then
yeah.
Scotty's like, oh, you don't have to. Conveniently, right now, the saucer's going to crash. Duck down.
I got a surge of enthusiasm from Scotty's introduction, from it veering away from being two aliens, from the sequence fighting the Gorn, seeing a full-grown Gorn. There was enough things that I liked in there that I was pretty on board at the episode at that point.
Um, I did like when they beamed Chapel and Spock back to the Enterprise, and number one is immediately like, okay, y'all got to get to work. Sorry. But we really need you. And then I thought the
Yeah,
switcheroo they do with beaming up the colonists was really clever. They tricked me. I did not see it until the end when
right.
they reveal it. So good job with that because they show a shot of them beaming up and they play fair. It's a different transporter effect, but it's subtle enough in the heat of the moment I didn't notice. And they cut from
Yeah.
them beaming up to then Pike and Battelle walking off of the transporter pad. So it gives you the impression, just from watching how they edit Star Trek, you think like, oh, they beamed everyone up. They're all back on board.
Yep. Yep. They were pretty clever about it. I think.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job editing there, fellas.
Yeah, I've mentioned this several times, but yeah, both the directing and the editing both extraordinarily good this episode. Wish the writing would have kept up with them a little bit for me, but yeah, they were killing
Sure.
it. And that's when they do talk about like Battelle and Pike being like, look, Himmer didn't give us a chance to try anything. Like, at least let us try. And Hillman, I liked him in Chapel when Battelle is like, if it looks like I'm gonna turn, let me go. And then Pike telling Chapel like, I don't intend to give up on her. And Chapel like, yeah, me neither. So I liked all that stuff. I like Scotty and
Hmm.
Palia. Another really good use of getting some levity into like this really serious high stakes story. But I liked their history. Something I suggested when she said Himmer was like an okay student. I said like, oh, I bet like that kid from Aberdeen was her best student. And
Nope. Apparently, this may be telling you something that even for presuming if we grant that she's a good teacher, and maybe she's not. Um,
well, she
um,
said he was the best student, but he had the worst grades.
right, but like look at look at these graduates that turned out. Hemmer, number one, and Scotty. These are all like some of the best in Starfleet. Uh, she should maybe say like, well, maybe my bad grades don't mean shit if it turns out you came out so well.
Yeah, but they're running around with the Gorn transponder thing, and then there's more Gorn ships beaming in, and they take the time to show us Battelle is sedated in sickbay. They take the time to show us Scotty and Palia about to do something with the gear that he brought. The ship just they really do a good job of like making you feel like the ship is under attack. They're just getting beat up, explosions everywhere,
Yeah, this is
and
this is next level. This is more than people rocking back and forth on the bridge. This is explosions that make people fly through the air and look like they're causing serious injuries, if not some deaths.
Yeah, they would do this in Berman era sometimes. It was normally like a big deal, like in
Right.
in the pilot episode of Deep Space Nine when you see a Vulcan fly out of his seat at Wolf 359. It was
Right.
it's something like you save this for like the really big battles, I guess.
It's
And the,
the visual language of Trek is actually pretty consistent on that. It's like if you're in a bit of a rough spot, bouncing back and forth. Things start getting bad, guys get catapulted.
and so we end with they've the interference field is gone. Everyone's back on the Enterprise except for Mbenga, La'an, Ortega's, and the other survivors. They're in a Gorn ship. The Gorns are attacking the Enterprise. April says, "Don't return fire. It can start a war." Battelle in sickbay, and Pike being asked, "What are you gonna do?" And it seems like he is uncertain, and that is where we're going to have to leave Strange New Worlds for probably like a year and a half. I'm gonna guess probably till the first half of 2025.
It's going to be a bit. I've talked to at least two people who were kind of upset about the to be continued. It's funny because it never even occurs to me to kind of my mind just doesn't kind of
I
work
know.
that way.
Yeah, like it doesn't. It seems it's weird to me when people are like, "Oh, I hate that I have to wait." So it's like that's just. Sometimes TV has like a cliffhanger finale. Like that's just
Yeah, to me it's
normal.
fun, and
Yeah.
it evokes fun times. Now if you thought it was like poorly done, that's fair. That's people can not like how it was done. But yeah, I don't, and we are gonna have to wait longer. I guess I just always feel like there's really just so much entertainment bouncing around in our worlds
Well,
that
even
I'm
with
never
Star
like
Trek,
I'll never be entertained again.
we're gonna get 20 episodes of Prodigy somewhere. We're gonna get that. We're gonna get 10 Discovery. We're gonna get 10 Lower Decks. There's gonna be 40 episodes of Star Trek to keep us entertained in the meantime. So I'm not. It's not a huge. And again, like I'm not really like that invested in like this story. I'm more looking forward, like I was saying, to Strange New World season 3, episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah,
7, 8,
yeah,
9, 10 than I am episode 1.
yeah.
This
You're
is
ready to get to move past the Gorn and whatever Batelle's fate will be, and you're like, let's see what's happening over on Planet X.
Yeah. Can we get some Tholians in the house, please? Give me
Hmm.
some Tholians in season 3. But yeah.
I saw in the comments that Dan Kiefer said it was a weird ending. It was like he was possessed, talking about Pike. And I do like they did that thing that I used to notice when I would like watch. My grandmother would be watching soap operas, daytime soaps,
Hmm.
and when they're about to cut to commercial, somebody will have said something dramatic like, that was my sister, and then the camera would zero in on their face and hold on it for a weirdly long amount of time, like five full beats of a second, 5 seconds, but it was like that was just how they're like, we want the audience to kind of we want the moment to almost I feel like time slows down. I think in both these soaps, which are pretty stupid, I'm not a soaps guy, but also in Trek, I think they were kind of allowing for it to be a sort of a subjective experience, not like it sort of did feel like Pike is like, I wonder what I'll do, while everybody else is blowing up around him. But I think it was just supposed to be more like time slow to a crawl for him as this momentous, horrific decision weighs on his shoulders. So
Well,
just a bit of stylish filming, I think.
I think it's very obvious that they wanted this to be that best of both worlds cliffhanger where there's a close up on Riker on the bridge where he has to make like the important decision, like, do you fire on Picard or not? But what they do different is like in that case, and with best of both worlds, they immediately had Riker say, fire. So then it's kind of like, it hits
Uh,
very different because you're like, oh shit, he did shoot. What's gonna be the results of that? Um, but
they should
I
somebody should edit that in where they're like, "Your orders, Captain. Your orders," and they just cut to Riker. He's like, "Fire."
But I'm no, I'm glad they didn't do like the same thing that they
Yeah, yeah.
because then it would have been like, oh, that's like an exact copy of that moment.
Yeah,
So,
no, no. I want
um,
it to literally be Riker saying it, like he just kind of, as if he just leaped onto their bridge, and he's like, "Man of action time, fire!"
but I mean, I think Riker is probably a better wartime captain than Pike. But I think that's a really cool flaw to give like your main guy. 'Cause it's kind of a flaw that also, oh, he's so good at heart that it's hard for him to become. He can still do it, but it's just it goes against his nature, and he has to become the warrior.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot, and it's it's also something that kind of makes him seem a little different than Kirk. If you're gonna have Kirk showing up on the show a lot, I think it's good to highlight those distinctions because
Mm-hmm.
Pike, Roddenberry had like the
I
same
mean,
idea for Pike, and the only reason why he changed the name is because like he wanted to be able to reuse the footage of the cage when he knew he wasn't getting Jeffrey Hunter back. So it's the only reason why he named Shatner's character Kirk instead of Pike.
one of my favorite moments on in season, what was the season 1 finale called?
A Quality of Mercy.
Quality of Mercy, right? Referencing Errand of Mercy, was seeing Kirk and Pike kind of debate tactics
Mm-hmm.
and letting Kirk kind of be a kind of clearly different kind of captain.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that. So.
And what I was thinking of this earlier today, and like, well, what would be why does Kirk have that edge, that Pike doesn't? And I was thinking like, oh, what if it comes from and I used to kind of push back when people would say this. I guess I'm getting on board with it now. But the idea of like Kirk he's kind of a nerd growing up. He's kind of, he's the walking stack of books with legs. I never
Hmm.
meant that to be like, oh, he's kind of like a nerd kid that got like bullied a lot growing up. But I know like people, because of like Finnegan and stuff like that, there is a strong case to be made for that. And probably like the majority of fans probably agree with that at that point. And I've kind of come around to it in recent years just because I didn't really picture that growing up, but hearing people make the case for it. So it's like, what if because of that, because he had like a little bit of a rougher time, what if Pike was like he was always like
Kind of
he's
liked.
always he's always the stud. He's always like the real popular kid, and people are just like always nice to him. And then you have like Kirk, who like had to deal with like the bullies and stuff, and like that kind of like toughened him up. And he knew like no, like sometimes you're not going to be able to sweet talk your way out of things. You're just gonna have to like punch someone in the face to save your own ass. You just got to
It's
do it. And
it,
like maybe that's where he learned that.
yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, we're kind of like trying to make the disparate pieces of some stories fit
Hmm.
together. But I think it's a solid case. I
Yeah,
think it works.
and that's fun to do. I love trying to put this
Yeah,
stuff together
it's
like
part of
that.
the one of the fun bits of a shared world is seeing
Yeah.
when things maybe don't quite seem like they fit, and then you're like, well, but maybe if we kind of give a generous reading of this and try and focus on this element, they're like maybe it does work, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I also think it really reinforces what they brought up in Discovery season 2 when they kept the Enterprise out of the war. And Captain Cornwell said that was because they wanted, if anyone was going to survive, they wanted it to be the Enterprise, and they wanted it to be
Right.
Pike and his crew, and the best of it, the best of the Federation. But it might have also, part of that might have been like, we're trying to like genocide the Klingons by planting a bomb on Kronos, and I don't think Chris is going to go along with that. So maybe
Right.
we do need to like push him out of the war.
That's what they told him, but that wasn't completely what they meant. Hmm. Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like it works on like both fronts.
it
So yeah,
does. It
I like
does.
that. So that's a cool thing. I like that addition to his character. And I guess I am curious myself. What does he decide to do? So we will find out eventually.
I suspect it will be one of these things where it is presented as a binary choice, and I don't think that he's going to win the day by treating it as such. I think he's going to find the Kirk thing, like not exactly a Kirk thing, but some sort of third way out. He doesn't like to lose either.
That kind of is the Star Trek thing. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
we're so
Kirk.
smart, we came up with
Kirk is
with a
not the
better
only one to do that.
solution.
To me, I think of it as a superhero thing because I think it always comes down to like how in superhero comics, especially the ethos used to be in like the Bronze Age was like they
Mm.
don't kill, and there would always be like there's always a better way, and they kind of made it so that for most of those characters, sometimes it's because they had powers, but they actually did always find some other way. And I like that idea that if you pushed yourself hard enough, if you were
Yeah.
innovative enough, that you could always work around that.
Well, it's an
Obviously that's
inspirational
not
story.
right. It's something you're
And
like I will try to be like that. But yes,
if you're reading like a superhero comic and you're asking for realism, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. So I like that. I like that inspirational
yeah,
aspect of this. It's like the Age of Ultron to make it a bit more like a normie recognizable thing. But
sure.
like when they're basically like, oh, if we're not gonna be able to like save all these people in time to stop the city from falling, and then Captain America is basically like, fuck that, we're gonna find a way anyways because we're just gonna do it.
Yeah, yeah. I like the idea that perseverance and goodwill could drive it to things to just work.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to watch like a Captain America story where it's, like gritty reality, then I don't that confuses the hell out of me. I don't know. I don't know. That's not that's a weird way to look at superheroes, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um
But I think we all do also like little shades of realism in there. You want sometimes a veneer of realism, even if it's not realism. You want it to still feel like it's the real world and not just fantasy land.
yeah, I want it to ring true in
Yeah,
some way,
a
but
little bit of truth.
I mean, like if you made like a realistic Batman movie, like the bat signal wouldn't work. You can't just like aim a spotlight up in the sky and make like this bright ass signal that some dude who lives, 30 miles outside of the city is gonna see.
And his
Um,
bad guys would probably grab his cape all the time and
like
throw his ass around.
yeah, yeah, but like I mean, like who the hell wants to see a Batman movie that doesn't have a cape and doesn't have a bat
Yeah.
signal? You know,
Yeah, if
that's
you take that away, then
yeah,
you've just got what was it? I think I heard like Christian Bale or somebody talking about wearing the bat suit, and he said if you get rid of it, he's just a special ops guy, like a black ops dude, just running around on the buildings. Like you need the cape. It's like that's what makes the theatricality is Batman too.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Sorry for the
Um,
tangent, y'all. It was just a little superhero nerding out.
Well, let's talk about some Gorn eggs. Those are the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections in the episode. I thought would be worth mentioning. Ironically, not very many in this episode. There's a
These are the
few though.
rare Gorn eggs you want to hatch, not like
The
the ones on the show.
Yeah, not like the ones that are in Batel's body, or I don't know, where do those eggs just? I guess like in like the
I
chest, like
think.
they come out of
Oh,
Buckley's
you're right.
back.
It must go through your body system and kind of go to your chest and body cavity stuff. Because yeah, like her arm is where they like I guess entered, but I guess yeah, the little swimmers go in there. I don't know. It's gross.
The visual Gorn egg we got was the use of the Gorn insignia logo,
Oh,
graphic, whatever you want to
yeah.
call it, which was made canon just last year in the Star Trek Prodigy show. I'm sorry, in the Star Trek Prodigy episode Masquerade. It originally came from the Star Trek Starfleet Academy video game in the 90s that had like the live action footage of there's Shatner as Kirk and George Takei as Sulu, and they made a Klingon Academy sequel to it. That's pretty cool. But yeah, that's where it first originated. But on screen now. And then of course Montgomery Scott. I love that Palea is the first person in the timeline to call him Scotty because he introduces himself as
Mm.
Lieutenant Montgomery Scott, and then only Palea calls him Scotty. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
but here's if you're watching the video of this, here's a side by side of him with how he'll appear 6 years later after this. He doesn't look like a ton like James Doohan in Where No Man Has Gone Before, but he actually looks more like James Doohan when he's like old and chubby with a mustache.
Right,
So
like there's a little bit of softness to his face. He's
yeah,
got a little bit of a baby face.
yeah.
Now he's not as pudgy as
No, but I mean, he looks like a dude who could grow up to be that dude when I see
yeah,
them
yeah.
side by
So it's a
side.
good
So,
point. That's fair.
um, and he talked about his ship, the stellar the star scanning ship, the Star Diver, but it had the Hubble K7C stellar assessment array on the Star Diver. So that's I assume named after astronomer Edwin Hubble. And the star they were studying is the Shangdi, and that's like a thing from Chinese folklore or
Mm,
mythology. It's like that's a word for like a supreme being, but not like the like capital G God, but like it's like a different entity or so. I don't know, but Shangdi
okay.
it comes from Chinese folklore. That's what I got on the Gorn eggs though. Not much. They were largely using concepts that the show had like built up itself that are like things that Strange New Worlds has been contributing to itself. So, which is kind of means sometimes we get like less references, less Gorn eggs and stuff. So that in Lower Decks season 3, there's a lot fewer Gorn eggs because like they're referencing their own history and stuff. So, which is kind of a good sign when you see like the show utilizing its own history. But I would be curious what other people think about this episode. We talked about it for over an hour and a half. I think Dave and I both shared a lot of opinions, and I want to know what everyone else is thinking. So please, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. You can reply to my tweets on Twitter. You can talk to us in the Discord server or the Facebook page. Links to all of that in the descriptions. We're also trying to get active on like some other platforms like Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter alternatives galore. So hopefully we start having some interactions in some other places. I need to take the time to look into that. It's gonna make posting everything so hard. If I gotta like, it's gonna make everything take 5 times longer. But it's gonna have to go on like 5 different social media platforms. But I guess
Yeah.
that's the world
Thanks.
Elon has made for
Thanks,
us.
Elon. By the way, since he renamed it X,
Oh,
and
no one
that
says that though. It's just
I
everyone
know, I
ignores that and
know.
keeps calling it Twitter.
But the other problem is they can't take it because Spock, the X. That's his thing.
Someone had like that Twitter handle like at X, and they just like removed it. And just
Yeah,
fuck
apparently,
you. We're taking this.
it screws up a bunch of things, and there's legal issues and things that are confusing about just using the one word. I don't know. He's stupid. It's one more dumb. You know,
People used to get mad at me for saying he's stupid. People would be like, "No, Elon is great."
yeah, things had to catch up with you, Father. You were ahead of the curve by a lot on that one, and honestly, it kind of shows you what kind of good PR a billionaire can pump out to kind of have people that on board. Well, I will say this. I think in Trek circles in particular, the idea of an individual person being like a benevolent person who's trying to push for a Star Trek future, it's a good story, right?
I guess that's why they name a junior high after him in the Star Trek universe.
Oops, yeah, let's go back and edit that scene,
There's just
please.
like another Musk who like did something in World War III or something. He like saved a bunch of babies from getting blown up or something.
Yeah,
They didn't say Elon Musk Junior High. They just say Musk Junior High. So
right. That was Armando Musk, the actual good person.
yeah, that's like in Star Trek '09. Like I refuse to believe that the Truman is named after Harry Truman because I don't think he'll be remembered fondly in the future. Or I don't think any U.S. presidents will be. So anytime there's like Jefferson, Washington, like anything like that, I'm like nope, 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 nope. We don't like any of them in future history. They all suck. But but yeah, tell us what you think of this episode, Dave. I think we have some responses from I can't even remember some like small like forgetful episode last time. What was it? What was 209? Remind me.
That would be
Uh
Subspace Rhapsody,
oh, which one was that? Uh,
the musical episode.
it didn't ring a
it's it's
bell.
it's the one with all
Strangely for a
this.
musical. Oh yes, I forgot that they did that. No one's talked about. I haven't. Did anyone like reply to us? I hadn't seen. Do people on the internet have opinions on a Star Trek musical episode? What were they saying?
So Father, here's some responses, including a little bit pulled from the page, the Twitter page of our musical expert Rachel Bloom.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is from Rachel's tweet because I forgot to do one, but
Yeah.
she tagged my account in it, so it's
So
our
here we
followers, regular followers, still saw it. So
yeah.
what do we got?
Christopher Collins says, I was surprised how good the episode was and how talented the cast was in their singing abilities. Farouk says it was fab. Let's see. Monroe Basher says, staying up late listening to Leon sing. It's perfect. Seen lots of musicals with my mom. Much missed. Some people have no heart. I assume referring to people who weren't feeling the episode. And says, this could be the new Rocky Horror. Let's see. Kirsten says, it was so good. And the Buffy refs, oh my God. And lastly, Dr. Shane Huntington says, it was gold. My wife and I loved it. Bring on the stage show. Which, yeah, it'd be fun to get a Star Trek stage show mounted out there. I'm for that. Give it one more way. There's such a media onslaught of the other Star franchise that that you can't touch it. It's just dominates with all the video games and toys and stuff. So yeah, let's get a
Hmm.
few unique things out there for Star Trek
Yeah,
stage musical.
as long I like as long as we have like more consistent quality because I think most of that other Star franchise I think it's really not good about half the time. But
Just saw an article floating around, and I don't know if it was from a kind of slightly dodgy place like Screen Rant or if it was IGN or whoever it was, but somebody was, I think, kind of doing a general assessment of the franchises and saying that even while like Star Wars is kind of like seemingly looking backwards with nostalgia for the most part. Star Trek is really is pushing forward, and I wonder if we'll see more articles like that. We'll see.
Yeah, because
I like Star Wars.
think Trek,
I adored Andor, but a lot of Star Wars is kind of nostalgia.
I mean, I think Trek is very nostalgic too, but it tries to do both. It does a good, like, Strange New World's very nostalgic, but it also has a lot of new. It's in the title. Like Picard was season 3 was a big nostalgia fest, but look how it ended. It's like, oh, all the old timers retire, and here's, like, some new characters going forward. It's about, like, the future. The last episode is literally called it's called The Last Generation, but the idea of the ending of it ends with showing us Seven and Jack and Rappy, and it's like the next generation is basically
a baton was passed.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I think Trek does do a little bit job of pushing forward, but we'll be back next week to discuss all of Strange New Worlds Season 2 in the rear view. And we'll do a Thursday stream too. I'm in the musical episode. I'm singing. I'm rhyming at least. But we'll do a Thursday stream if that gang wants to get together and talk about their thoughts on Strange New Worlds Season 2. Do a reaction to, like, the whole season now that we've seen it all. And Dave and I will be around Friday, and then we'll have to find something else to talk about after that. But then we'll be switching gears to Lower Decks. And getting ready for the return of Lower Decks on September 7th. But in the meantime, I had a lot of fun with Strange New World Season 2.
It is crazy how fast it went by with its bonus episodes and stuff like that, and it just seemed to go fast.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I think it was on the same level as Season 1 for me, but we'll get into that type of discussion next week when we talk about the entirety of Season 2 and how we feel about it. But until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking